Hello everyone, this is Jimmy Cultist back again with another dive into how to create an exploration game in Dreams. I forget which part this is, I think it's part 7, but I'm not exactly sure. Today we're going to be talking about a very simple but very important aspect of any game you might be creating, and that is lighting. Not environmental lighting, but light sources, like lamps, windows, I don't know, just about anything. And we're going to get into the basics real quick. For the purposes of this tutorial, I've constructed a little lamp here. It's made up of 3 sculpts, a shade, a bulb, and a base. Now, a real simple way to create a light source is just to go in here, L1 and square, and you can press X and turn up the brightness, or glow as they call it. And that'll naturally create a light, like a little orb of light or illumination around the object. And you can turn it off if you want to just have it bright but not emit any light. Now there's a few flaws I can see with making objects as light sources. Generally it's not a problem, however they're not always the right size, and if you adjust the brightness it would also change the brightness of the bulb, so if you want a really bright bulb but not a very bright light surrounding it, it can be a bit of a problem. I prefer to generally leave them off. And what I'll do is I'll take a little chip, stick it right down here, and I'll choose from one of the 2 light sources. By the way, you can even customize them to have a light bulb icon, so it's easy to find and remember which chip it is. But there's 2 types of light available. There is the spotlight, which is good for direct and high contrasted light. It's kind of difficult to work with in these kind of scenarios, but there is a way to kind of make it work a little better. If you just turn off the shadows emitted by the bulb, you can stick it right where the bulb is. Since the bulb doesn't cast shadows, it won't block the light. However, it doesn't, it kind of creates a wonky shadow, which you don't necessarily want. Putting it above is probably alright. Probably a decent way to create a light source. Now I'm going to go into a few settings, and for the sake of being able to judge our lighting properly, I'm going to alter the global settings with a keyframe, just so it's a little bit easier for us to tell what we're doing. Alright. Now here at this setting you can increase the brightness or decrease it. You can change how long the beam is, how far down it goes. And you can change the angle, if you want it to be a straight beam of light or a wide beam of light. If you're trying to illuminate a room, it's probably best to have it wide. You can even change the fade angle, which can make it into a soft blur, or a very sharp, crisp spotlight, like so. I find this sharp look is especially good if you're going for cartoony games or cel-shaded kind of stuff. It works pretty well. It can look very good. But another thing you can do is if you don't want it to be impeded by any object, like if you don't want it to cast shadows, you can just turn this off. There are, of course, a few downsides, like it'll shine right through the floor if you have another room below and things like that, but in some cases it's definitely viable. It still looks pretty good. You can also use images, and if you set them to blur, it kind of makes them a little more natural. This would be a good way to make foliage, if you were like trying to create shadows cast by a tree. I think this would be an excellent method of doing that. There's lots of different things it could be used for. But that's just the load down on spotlights. Now I'm going to talk about the other form of light, which is the diffused light. Now the diffused light has certain advantages. One, it makes a nice soft glow. It doesn't cast as harsh of light, it's a lot more basic. So it's kind of not always good if you want really dramatic lighting. However, it's good for incidental lighting in a scene. Also, there's a few other things that make it useful. For one, if you go to test mode here, and then you go to heat maps, spotlights cast heat maps. I'll give you an example. Let's just put a bunch of spotlights here to demonstrate. Oh, not here. Alright. Now you'll see this bright red. That's going to affect your game. It's going to have trouble drawing so many spotlights. And if you have a large scene with tons of spotlights, usually with interiors it's not as big of a problem. However, it can still be because they draw through the other side of the wall and that's not good. But needless to say, you don't want to have a lot of spotlights close together unless, you know, it's a very specific situation and you can afford it. But these, on the other hand, don't really create any heat maps whatsoever. So they're really affordable and useful when lighting a scene. You can just copy them out. To talk about some of the downsides, it's if you want them to be really bright, it also makes them larger. However, there's ways to make this, you know, to deal with it. One way is to lower the color so that it's like, you know, much darker. It's wider, but, you know, darker. That works out pretty well. And of course, if you resize them, it automatically ups the brightness, so just keep that in mind. I'd say altogether, though, these are a lot less used than they should be. I think people don't give these diffused lights enough credit. They're quite handy. Also, sometimes they're really good at highlighting specific aspects of a scene. Like, if you just want a little tiny light in a very specific area, they're pretty good for that. Now on to... there is one other downside I would like to bring up, and that's with moving objects. Just a quick thing about diffused lights. Now that looks pretty nice, however, when we move it kind of does this weird fluttery effect. Which isn't necessarily a big deal, but if you don't like that, that might be a potential drawback from these kind of things. I think I'll just go ahead and leave this here so that if he's in a dark place he can still see his way around. Now, we're going to talk about one other form of light, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. And that's like the paint light. If you go to paint mode, go to Rule Flex, select the color that you think is appropriate, go to Surface Snap, and all you have to do is turn up the glow, and it will look like, you know, a lit window. Alternatively, if you want to work with more natural lighting, you can leave a gap behind the window, like so. I'm not really going to use this because I prefer to not have the gap in this particular case, but if you're using natural lighting has a few advantages in terms of how it draws and how it looks. So in some cases I would use natural lighting and just leave a gap behind the window. Always remember to have an invisible wall though, so the player can't jump out through the scene. But yeah, natural lighting sometimes works very well. So I wouldn't knock that necessarily, but for now we're going to go with no gap and just using a, you know, a paint fleck. Now I'm going to show you one other final alternative way to light a scene, which is actually more recent. I believe it came in an update this year. I don't remember for certain. But if you just draw out a paint fleck, and we're going to make it glow. Oh, not that, the paint fleck. Sometimes you got to be careful what you're grabbing. But if we make it glow, set it to glow always, and then turn down the opacity, you can't see the fleck anymore unless you go into preview invisibility, but it emits light nonetheless. This is extra good if you want to highlight very specific areas or items, and really it's actually a massive boon to any Dreams creator. I used it quite a bit in my creation mecha. You can even alter how bright you want it to be, or how dull you want it to be, or what color you want it to be. It's just all kinds of useful. You can also create really high contrast, crazy lighting, like if you just want like a bright red section of the house or something. Create some trippy visuals, you know, that sort of thing. It works really well for that. But that's just about all the different forms of light that you can have, and all of their various pros and cons. I can't think of very many cons for this kind of light, other than the fact that you have to be very careful how bright you make it, but yeah, that's pretty much all of it. We're going to give a quick shout out to our monthly subscribers on Ko-fi. Here are the names. And that's all. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. If you wish to support our earnest insanity, you can check the links in the description to donate or buy merch. Until next time, goodbye.